"We didn't come to celebrate," my dad said, tapping his fork against his glass. My mom stood up beside him. "We're here to officially disown you." I work as a freelance graphic designer and part-time art instructor at a community college. I've always been the creative one in a family that values business degrees and steady corporate jobs. My younger brother, Ethan, is the one they always praised. Finance job, big house, perfect Christmas cards with matching sweaters and golden retrievers. I chose art, risky income, no spouse, no kids. Just a studio apartment filled with half-finished canvases and the constant hum of my laptop running design software late into the night. At family dinners, my dad would lean back in his chair and say, "So, are you still doing that little drawing thing?" I laughed it off for years. Every single time, I wasn't rich or glamorous. I rented a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building where the hallway always smelled like cleaning solution and cooked onions. I drove an old car with peeling paint on the hood. But I paid my own bills. I built my own client list from nothing. I never once asked them for a single dollar res. Enough for say. They said I lacked ambition. I said I valued freedom. Still, even after all those years of quiet dismissal, I never expected them to humiliate me publicly, and definitely not on my birthday. If you've ever been told your dreams weren't real enough, hit that subscribe button right now. Ciao. Do you know what it feels like to chase something no one else believes in? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story, and click hype if you've ever had to prove people wrong. The party was in a private room at a mid-range Italian restaurant downtown. Ethan understands responsibility, he said, nodding toward my brother like he was presenting an award winner. I replied quietly, almost to myself, "I've never asked you for money." He shrugged. "Exactly. That's the problem. You don't even try to build something real." That word real sat in my chest like a stone. Then came the comparison. My mom pulled out her phone like she had prepared notes. She started listing Ethan's achievements one by one. His promotion to senior analyst, his investment portfolio, his new SUV, his mortgage approval at 29. "That's what success looks like," she said, holding up the phone as if showing evidence in a trial. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A friend of mine put her hand over her mouth. They had turned my 35th birthday dinner into a public performance review, and I was the employee being terminated. I felt humiliated down to my bones, but I didn't cry. I pressed my fingernails into my palms and held steady. Then my dad turned toward my friends. He pointed vaguely around the table and said, "She's stubborn. Always has been. Always chasing hobbies instead of stability. You all know that." My college dean, Dr. Alvarez, who had come to support me, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She folded her arms and tilted her head like she was watching something she had seen before. My parents assumed I was still scraping by. They assumed the struggling artist narrative they had written for me 10 years ago has till the current chapter. They had absolutely no idea that my little drawing thing had grown far beyond anything they could have imagined. Instead of defending myself emotionally, instead of shouting or storming out, I started calculating my words carefully, every single one. What they didn't know is that I had a plan they never saw coming. 2 years ago, sitting alone in my apartment at 2 a.m. with the glow of my monitor lighting up the room, I started an anonymous online brand. I built a website selling digital art templates, illustration packs, and design courses for beginners and professionals. I never told my family because I already knew exactly what they would say. My dad once looked at an ad on his tablet and said, "Who pays for stuff online like that? It's all a scam." I smiled and kept quiet. I didn't argue. I just kept building. My channel grew steadily. My courses sold to students in 14 countries. I reinvested every single dollar back into the business. Better equipment, better marketing. A small team of freelancers I hired to help with customer support. The income became steady. Then it became more than steady. But I didn't post flashy photos on social media. I didn't buy a luxury car or move into a penthouse. I built quietly the same way I had always worked, in the shadows without applause. Tonight, standing in that restaurant with garlic bread going cold on the table, my parents thought they were exposing my failure. And they thought this was the moment I would finally break and admit they were right. They didn't realize they were about to expose their own ignorance. My former design professor, Miss Harper, was sitting near the back of the room. She had retired from teaching 2 years ago and now worked as a respected creative director at a branding firm in the city. She came tonight because I had invited her personally. She was the first person who ever told me my work had commercial value. Earlier in the evening, before the speeches began, she had leaned toward me and whispered, "You don't owe anyone an apology for your talent." She knew about my online business. She had even consulted for me privately when I was building my first course curriculum. She helped me price my templates correctly and reviewed my branding strategy over coffee at her kitchen table. As my parents continued their public dismantling of my life, Miss Harper watched calmly from her seat. Her expression didn't change. She didn't flinch or gasp. She just observed, like someone watching a chess game where she already knew the final move. Ethan leaned toward me and muttered, "Maybe just let it go, Danielle." He thought I would back down. He expected me to grab my purse and leave quietly through the side door while everyone pretended it hadn't happened. My parents assumed my silence meant defeat. Dad crossed his arms and said, "This is tough love. You'll thank us one day." Miss Harper met my eyes across the room. She gave me a small, deliberate nod. That was all I needed. That single gesture told me everything. I wasn't leaving this room embarrassed. I was leaving it on my terms. I picked up the microphone. "Since we're sharing announcements tonight," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. The room went completely silent for the second time. Even the background music from the restaurant seemed to fade. I looked at Miss Harper. She was already moving. She pulled a laptop from her bag and walked to the projector mounted on the wall that the restaurant used for private events. She connected it in seconds. My website dashboard appeared on the screen behind me. Revenue charts, subscriber counts, client logos. Numbers that told a story no one in my family had ever bothered to read. "This hobby," I said, turning to face my parents, "brought in 6 figures last year." Gasps scattered across the room. Someone whispered, "Are you serious?" My dad squinted at the screen and frowned. "That can't be real." I clicked to the next page, client testimonials from international companies. A design agency in London, a tech startup in Singapore, an education platform in Toronto, all of them praising my templates and coursework. "I built this without your trust fund," I continued, "without your advice." Without a single word of encouragement from either of you. My mom's face softened into something I hadn't seen before. Confusion mixed with something that almost looked like shame. She whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her directly. "Because you never asked. You only judged." "Who only judged?" The room was perfectly still. I could hear the ice shifting in someone's water glass. I turned to the guests and thanked my friends for showing up and believing in me when it wasn't popular to do so. I thanked Miss Harper for being the mentor I never found at home. Then I turned back to my parents. If being disowned means I get to live without constant criticism and comparison, then honestly, I'm okay with that. Ethan stared at me with wide eyes, his mouth slightly open. He looked like someone seeing a person clearly for the very first time. The power dynamic in that room shifted completely. The same space that had felt suffocating 10 minutes ago now felt steady beneath my feet. My parents sat down slowly, one after the other, speechless. For once in their lives, completely and totally speechless. The dinner ended awkwardly after that. People finished their drinks quietly. A few relatives left without saying goodbye, but the moment I stepped outside into the cool night air, my friends erupted. They cheered. They hugged me. One of them said, "That was the greatest birthday speech I've ever witnessed." Miss Harper walked out last. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "This was never about money, Danielle. It was about respect. And tonight you claimed it." My parents tried to call the next day. I saw my mom's name flash across my phone screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then my dad called. Voicemail again. For the first time in 35 years, I didn't feel small when their names appeared on my phone. I didn't feel that familiar tightening in my stomach. They tried to shame me into changing who I was. They tried to embarrass me into becoming someone I was never meant to be. Instead, they forced me to step into the spotlight I had been avoiding. I didn't need their approval. I never did. I needed my own confidence. And now, standing in my small apartment with morning light coming through the window and the sound of the city waking up below, I finally have it. They underestimated you two, didn't they? Have you ever been publicly embarrassed for chasing your dream while everyone else played it safe? Share your story in the comments. I want to know how you handled it. Subscribe if you're done shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. And click hype to help this story reach others who need it today. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and click hype to help it reach more people who need to hear it. Your voice matters in our community. Share your own experience in the comments below. I'm reading every single one.